First thing I want to talk about is XAI opened up Grok 2.5. It's open source now. I wanted to talk about Scott Rail. They had an AI announcer that they put into their trains. Problem was that Reed Speaker trained it on a voice actress, and it got back to her, and she was like, "Whoa, hang on a second. I never agreed to this." It's an interesting thing that we're going to have to deal with in the world now, where AI can generate deepfakes of your likeness, but also your voice is part of that. Axios highlighted a new trend that AI bots are negotiating on behalf of somebody totally autonomously. We're going to have a lot of bots talking to bots to negotiate things on our behalf. And you know what? Hello, everybody. The summer is almost over. I get it. It was kind of slow in the news, but also it wasn't. I mean, we're in the middle of the intelligence revolution, so there's so much going on. So there's so much to catch up on. I took a little break over the summer, and now we're back. I am Scott Stephenson, and this is my AI rant about the top stories and some about audio AI. So let's get into it. First thing I want to talk about is XAI opened up Grok 2.5. It's open source now. So Grok 3 is what is out there. So if you go to XAI, install the app, interact with it on X, Twitter, then you would get Grok 3 or 3.5 or something like that. But it's a newer version. But Elon, he mentioned that he was going to be open sourcing the models. Now they have. Grok 2.5 is open source. Well, it's open weights, which means that the weights are available. But it has a pretty restrictive license. I think it's if you're a company with more than 1 million in revenue or ARR, then you have to work with them to get a license. So if you're a tinkerer, then you could try it out. If you're an extremely tiny company that's just getting started, then you could check it out. But it's kind of hard to, at least when you announce it as open source, right? And then it isn't truly open, like that's kind of weird. But I get it because this is similar in structure to how Llama is open sourced as well. But Llama has like a much larger ceiling. It's like if you have 700 million daily active users or something like that, that's when you have to talk to them to get a license. So it's a much more restrictive license, but it is open so people can try it out. Interesting part about it though is it's like 200 something billion parameters, like maybe 270, 290, something like that. It's a huge model, and you can't just put that on a laptop or your phone or something like that. You have to have a massive set of GPUs. It isn't just one massive GPU either. You have to have like a whole machine, and it'll be spread across that machine. So you're talking like a $50,000 to $300,000 machine in order to run this. So, I mean, is the person who is using this for fun going to actually be able to use it? It doesn't really sound like it. So I bet that there will be companies that are smaller, or for their research arm, they inspect it and try and figure out what it's doing well, what it's not doing well. But then they can't use it in production. So I mean, it's kind of at least right now of limited value. But yeah, this is Grok 2.5. Elon says that Grok 3 is like 5 times bigger or something like that. That's even more problematic. And but he vows to open source that too. So maybe 6 months or a year from now. So you can look out for that next summer, I guess. But yeah, so that's one thing. It's an interesting transparency move, but yeah, the license and hardware demands kind of make it pretty elitist. We'll see what comes of that. Maybe somebody distills it down into a smaller model and then it's good. I'm not sure. Although the license maybe prohibits that. I don't know. That's something I'd have to look into. But another announcement: DeepSeek has a new model. It's V3.1. So V3 was what was out there for a long time. But V3.1 is the new one. It's got the point one. And I think the differences here are it has an extended context, I think out to 128K, so you can jam more stuff into it, use less RAG, that type of thing. I think they also added different capabilities like it can think even deeper, or it can think less deep and just give you a knee-jerk reaction, and it's kind of up to you to control that. Um, so that's interesting. Now, these models are very open. So contrasting with Llama, contrasting with Grok that have, ceiling limits, these are very open models. So China, continues to come from behind, but also now sort of lead, at least on the true open weights front. and there's a new entrant. It's V3.1. It still is really interesting to me that companies will use this model in production at scale, but I guess, they have a need and they need to get work done. And so they use it. And as long as it's fully air gapped and, put in an area where it can't send out data to its creators, then nobody cares. And so it's just being run. That's really interesting. Also, another piece to talk about here to come in later with GPT-5 is these models are starting to be reduced with or are starting to be released with reduced precision. So the V3.1 for DeepSync now is FP8. Typically, these models are distributed as FP16, and the way that models used to be trained is FP32. What does that mean? You need for 32 FP32. It means 32 bits for every number. You have to have 4 bytes for every number. If it's FP16, you have to have 2 bytes for every parameter number. And then for FP8, it means you only have to have 1 byte. So it's like 4 times smaller than what models used to be from storage standpoint. Same number of parameters, but just not as it just doesn't have the same discretization and fine tuned nature to the parameter to the numbers that make up the parameters. They're basically just skinny numbers. It runs faster and cheaper. But now most models are FP16, so this is like it takes up twice. It only needs half as much memory in order to run. So now with a mega model, you can put it on hardware that isn't as robust, doesn't have as much memory, which is something that the teams in China are having to deal with because they are kind of blockaded from getting the latest and greatest AI tech from NVIDIA, the chips, AMD as well, but these chips that have a lot of memory. And so then they find ways around it. They say, fine, we'll train with FP8. And you'll see that GPT-5 was shipped with 4 bits. So it's half a byte. So even smaller than DeepSeek. So I think it's becoming obvious that these models are really trying to fit into the memory constraint that's out there right now. They want to go bigger with the models, like the number of parameters, but they want to go smaller with the granularity in the parameters. And so that is kind of go wider, not deeper for each parameter. And it seems like it's working out pretty well. There's one other thing to talk about with DeepSeek, which is they mentioned that they've trained it on chips that aren't from NVIDIA, so that this model actually runs better on some homegrown Chinese chips. So I don't know. Are these DIY chips from AliExpress? Is it some other operation that's happening there? We'll see. But yeah, there's a whole new development that's still continuing to happen there. I wanted to talk about an interesting story in voice, which is something that I work on every day. Like with DeepGram, we do a lot of voice AI. This is primarily where we work, real time AI to power a whole bunch of interfaces around the world. Now we don't work with this company. We don't. I don't know these people, but it's an interesting story, which is ScotRail. They had an AI announcer that they put into their trains, and it's basically like Amtrak, but they have bagpipes. Anyway, it's in Scotland, all right. But they used a company called Reed Speaker to generate an AI announcer that was named Iona. Not sure how they would pronounce it in Scottish, but Iona. But the problem was that Reed Speaker trained it on a voice actress. There were old recordings from some other company that they worked with, and they produced a voice that sounds like her. And then all of these announcements happened in the train. And people started to notice that it was her, and it got back to her, and she was like, "Whoa, hang on a second! I never agreed to this," and is now pursuing a lawsuit with that company. So after these public complaints, and then actually government pressure too, like the government said, "I recommend ScotRail that you take this voice off." They actually have now changed the voice. And they're scrapping the AI voice. And it's an interesting thing that we're going to have to deal with in the world now where AI can generate deepfakes of your likeness, but also your voice is part of that. And it's something that's going to have to be figured out by the governments. But I guess AI voice theft is one thing, but maybe at least they could give free train rides. I don't know. So Scott Rail, maybe look out for that from them. We got another one here, which is AI boot camps being launched at the India AI Impact Festival. So I'll read some things here. So India's Central Board of Secondary Education will host free AI boot camps for students. These are classes 9 through 10 and teacher training classes 11 through 12, which is in partnership with Intel and NITI. The India AI Impact Festival invites entries by August 31st to showcase social impact and AI innovation. So the general idea is like, hey, we're sitting in the US right now. What is the US doing to educate our population about AI? Not as much as other countries. Other countries are partnering with US companies in order to bring AI education to their high schoolers and the teachers that are teaching them. I think this is just a big theme that education is going to leapfrog in the next few years, or there's an opportunity for it for folks who embrace AI. There's a school out there now that is catching some flack in the headlines too, which is a school that utilizes AI in its curriculum called Alpha School. That is happening in the U.S. and not through government partnership. It's through private company that is starting. But the general idea here is you want to up level your population and get them used to the intelligence revolution, get them using those tools as early as you possibly can. Well, you got to start early. You got to start in schools, and you got to start now. And there's a lot of competitive pressure to do it. So we've got IBM and Intel involved. So expect some kind of corporate PowerPoints that they'll be enduring. But nevertheless, they're putting their effort in. I think that's something to commend. Imagine you're 15 in high school and maybe you're not that great at math, but you're passing Chat GPT 101. This is what's going to be happening. This is what's happening now. And we need to revamp our curriculum across the world. Some are doing it faster. So keep an eye on that. I wanted to chat about something else too, which is this idea that my people will be talking to your people, or just bots versus bots, or bots and bots, or bots talking to bots. Axios highlighted a new trend that AI bots are negotiating on behalf of somebody or conducting commerce like totally autonomously and transforming sectors like hiring, education, and customer service. So yeah, I think you got to get ready for the internet's next phase. It's bots talking to bots, not people talking to people. And it's certainly going to be people talking to bots. But hey, we're gonna have a lot of bots talking to bots to negotiate things on our behalf. And you know what? We'll be thankful for it. Back in the 90s, it was people to people. Then into the 2000s, 2010s, up until now, it's people and machines, apps, that type of thing. But it wasn't voice, yet. Now in the last 5 to 10 years, voice has become more viable. But now that everybody's starting to get utility out of these bots, voice bots, text bots, things that are going out and checking the stock on a website for you, like all these different bots. Now, pretty soon, you're going to have a team of these bots that you're controlling, managing, and saying, hey, go out and talk and negotiate amongst yourselves and go figure this out. And then I'll have my people talk to your people. And this is just going to be how the world works. There's going to be an entire bot economy that's going to emerge. So if you are shopping, you could click buy now and pay at that price, or you could stick your bot on it and say like, hey, let's haggle and get the price down. I'll buy more. I'll delay. I'll do whatever in order to get this thing at a lower price. This is already happening the other way around to consumers, where Delta and other airlines are giving different prices to different people. But hey, why don't you have a bot to defend yourself, right? So that's gonna be really interesting. It's a good article to check out just because it gives you an idea of what the future is going to look like for bots. I wanted to get into something. We'll play a video here real quick, but where the folks on the All In podcast chatted about the AI bubble, Zuck freezing hires, and just in general what's happening right now. So let's play that.
All right, we got to talk about AI. AI mania hit a bit of a detour this week. All over the 3 or 4 days, AI stocks were down across the board because of this MIT study that went viral, as well as Sam Altman's comments about a bubble and Zuck instituting a hiring freeze in AI after going on a complete blitzkrieg. So let's get into it. Act 1, Monday, Fortune dug up a generative AI study that MIT published last week, or last month, I should say. In that study, MIT found that 95% of Gen AI pilots are failing to make it to production because of employee resistance, poor quality output. And the most interesting problem seems to be resource misallocation. According to the study, 70% of Gen AI budgets are going towards things like building sales and marketing tools, which have poor ROI. The highest ROI was found in back office optimization, like automating tasks that cut back spends.
So that's interesting. They brought this up on the pod, and I got a couple takes on this. Where we have this study that says 95% of AI pilots don't go to production, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's probably true. That you try a lot of things, and only 1 out of 20 work out and go to true production. At scale production. I'm sure there's a pipeline here where you try 20 things. You figure out that 10 of them are just stupid and you shouldn't do them. And then you have another 10 that are like, okay, well, they're somewhat feasible, but how much are they going to cost? Can they scale? Do we need to do this now or do we shelve it till later? And then maybe you cut that down to like 3 or 4, and then you try to do a somewhat scaled up beta of that with your users or your company. And then, out of those 3 or 4, you say, hey, okay, there's one that is a clear winner. We're going to go with that. The other ones, just shelve them. Who cares? And I think that's more of what's happening here than just, AI is failing to do the job that it said it was going to do. This is still really early days in the intelligence revolution. You got to go with the low hanging fruit. You got to go with the thing that's easiest to do and has sort of the dumbest breadth and scale. And so all of the smarter things or, kind of harebrained things that you're coming up with over here, they're going to be sidelined for a while. And then you go down the simple path. Just to give you an idea from from an audio AI perspective, there's a lot of call centers out there like pharmacies that are automating large parts of their call centers and the stream of information that people use in order to access the pharmacy to figure out information about their accounts and their prescriptions. Now, to talk about the AI bubble. So Sam says, maybe there's an AI bubble coming. He's got a tweet, that is suggesting that, or maybe the AI bubble's already here. And he's kind of hinting at the fact that there's a lot of funding going into AI right now, and also a lot of sort of FOMO and chasing with that money, et cetera. There's certainly a fair amount of that that's happening in the investment sphere right now. But also, you got to look at why would somebody like Sam say that there's an AI bubble after they have already raised tons of money? He has competitors now that are coming after him. And does he want them to get funding? Probably not. And so if he kind of generates a little bit of FUD out there, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, then now he secured his bag for the investment for the company that he's running. Now he can pull up the ladder for everybody else. So I'm not saying this is what Sam is doing. I'm just saying, hey, maybe this is an interpretation that makes sense. There are other things that might suggest that, like the open in OpenAI and how they open sourced a lot and then they didn't anymore. And then now they do again, but then they don't actually open source the flagship model. They open source a model that's not as good, which is GPT OSS. It really isn't as good, but it's something. They open source something, and then they get some internet points for open sourcing something. But you have to kind of read between the lines about why people are saying what they're saying. Now, look around in your organization. Look, are people using AI every day? They absolutely are. Did ChatGPT see a massive reduction in usage over the summer because students weren't using it? Yeah, absolutely. But AI is here to stay. It's integrated and will continue to integrate into people's lives into the future. This is something that's turning on. It's never turning off again. Voice AI, all the AIs, text AI, video AI, voice AI, it's all here. Real-time AI is coming. It's helpful to just go back to like the internet revolution or the mobile era. There were fits and starts in the beginning, where you kind of overcompensate or overinvest or you know form some opinion of how the market is going to go and then chase that, and then investors and people building the companies and consumers are like, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Doesn't make any sense. Let's do the boring scalable thing, or let's power B2B or something like that. And then, you know what, guess what, it all works out in the end. The internet is useful. It beyond everybody's wildest imagination in the 90s. Mobile is useful. Everybody has one in their pocket. They're addicted to it. They do it all the time. AI is useful. It's going to continue to be useful. So one of the overreactions, though, is something they mentioned with Zuck. Mark went on kind of a hiring spree. I don't know, for the last like 9 months or so, up until maybe a month or two ago, where he was buying companies and hiring folks. And so he 49% acquired Scale AI and then hired a bunch of the team from there. Scale AI is primarily a data labeling company. So it's kind of weird to think of that as like a generative AI acquisition. Yes, they're part of the stack, but they label a lot of data. They're not necessarily cutting edge model producers, but nevertheless, they got that team, which is extremely important for getting the data and the systems that you need in order to train the models. Then they have bought Play AI, which is a voice cloning and voice generation, text to speech voice AI company. They bought Waveforms, which is I believe it was started by the people that essentially did voice mode for ChatGPT. And it's only started like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago. After the success of voice mode, those people left and they said, we'll start a company. Hey, businesses are hard. It's hard to make revenue. We get it. And then they get acquired into Meta. So what was Zuck doing there? He's obviously piecing together a team kind of in a coming from behind from the coming from behind perspective. He's like, wait a minute, I need to give away models, llama. I need to pay a lot for a strategic advantage that I might have versus other companies that had a leg up on me. So like OpenAI or maybe Google or something like that. So he's going out and spending top dollar and in giving away models and investing a lot in becoming an AI giant right now, which makes sense. We're in the intelligence revolution. Of course, he should do that type of thing. But also now it's starting to cool, which also makes sense. Where you can't be giving out million, 10 million, $100 million offers to people and continue going on doing that. I mean, Zuck learned his lesson there, burning tons of money uh, in the in the AR VR world, where the metaverse, etc. But he does make these big moves. I mean, just look back at WhatsApp. Look back at Instagram, etc. They paid top dollar for those in order to get good talent into the company, and then they turned that into a real moneymaker later on. I'm sure they'll do that with these. Got another one here, which is an ALS patient regaining her voice. We've actually heard about this for the last 30, 40 years. Everyone remembers Stephen Hawking, right? But it wasn't his voice. That's one of the tricks here to this story. So a woman about 25 years ago lost her voice, and she had kids. And there's actually a videotape of her changing diapers, talking to the kids in her natural voice. But as the disease progressed, her kids grow up. She can't speak anymore. But there's this clip, this 8-second clip that exists of her speaking 25 years ago. And a company, it was 11 Labs and Smartbox. These two companies worked together in order to clone that voice out of this like 8 seconds of really tough audio. But we're able to clone her voice just from 8 seconds, basically. And then now her kids can hear her voice. Very cool story. Uh, but hey, these stories are all over the place, right? Like first it was AI scamming old people out of money with fake voices, but now they finally pay one back. I don't know. So general idea here though is we see a lot of entertaining use cases, we see a lot of questionable use cases with voice cloning, but hey, you see some things that actually bring value to people in the world. One thing I want to talk about the is GPT-5. So in the last few weeks, GPT-5 was launched, and most people know it like through their interaction with GPT-5 is through ChatGPT. And if you use ChatGPT, then you notice that there's been a significant change. They did some things that were kind of questionable. They said you can't get access to any of the old models. You have to use ChatGPT 5. That really pissed off a lot of people. I didn't have the same kind of reaction, like, "Whoa, what is this?" I was like, "Oh, thank God! I can dump a Word doc into this and have it like give me all angles on it, swifter, and not just like congratulate me for uploading a document." GPT-5 claims that they have enhanced reasoning and reduced hallucinations. It's probably true. It's happening through a chain of thought architecture, which is how most reasoning happens. They, of course, announced some of their benchmarking, which is trying to get the best scores on benchmarks, which is a little bit of gaming, and we've talked about that before. You game the system and you try and make it great, fine. But they did some benchmarking, and I can tell you, Google used to do this, Microsoft used to do this. They used to say, big data, you can't do it because it's big data. You don't have the networks, you don't have the machines, you don't have the talent, so you can't do it. You just trust us. But this was all a psyop to try to get startup founders and other companies to just say, yeah, maybe we should just use them. But yeah, it's not going to work here either. The market is going to freely develop, and then they're going to get an onslaught from all angles. That's just how it's going to work. Yeah, they claim also in GPT-5 that they upgraded coding. So I would look at this as, man, Anthropic was kind of kicking our butt. Not in all cases, I get it, but like Anthropic was doing really well on coding, so they had to up their game. But overall, hey, there was all this hype about GPT-5 for years, actually going back now, people extrapolating from GPT-3, like, oh my God, GPT-5 is basically going to be AGI. It's not, okay? It's another LLM that's pretty good. And that raises the question, are LLMs the path? And then you get the Jan LeCun discussion, and now everybody is actually starting to talk about that because these LLMs are clustering. They all have kind of similar capabilities at kind of similar sizes. And what I mean by capabilities is interactive mode, chat type, LLM usage, back office type usage. There is a whole new world of real-time AI that is coming. Voice is the first use case, but websites are going to be automatically generated. Every interaction in 10 years from now is probably going to go through AI, and it'll all be happening in real time. Humans are impatient. They need things to happen in 10 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds, 1 second, etc. And real-time AI is the only way that's going to be delivered. Voice is the first use case. There's going to be, videos will be another, there'll be a whole bunch more. And so that concludes our time today. I wanted to do that special segment on GPT-5 because it was such a big deal. It was it's not a flop, but it's not as big of a deal as people were hoping it would be. But I wanted to get that in, even though it took a little bit longer today. Thanks everyone for your time. I'll see you next time.